the president took office. A couple of updates for all of you at the top. Over the weekend, the Department of Health and Human Services released new data that showed more than 31 million Americans have gained access to quality, affordable health care through the Affordable Care Act, a record high that demonstrates the strength, durability, and impact of the historic law after years of relentless attacks on Americans' health care. President Biden also reunited with former President Obama for the White House's weekly conversation to share the news, discuss how the administration's special enrollment period has allowed more than 1.2 million Americans to enroll in health coverage, and highlight how the American Rescue Plan has lowered premiums and health care costs. Another update from the weekend. Over the weekend, the G7 finance ministers also endorsed President Biden's plan for a global minimum tax of at least 15%. This is a historic, unprecedented progress made possible by the president's and Secretary Yellen's commitment to a global tax system that is equitable and equipped to meet the needs of the 21st century global economy. The G7's endorsement is another example of America reasserting its leadership on the world stage, something we look forward to doing later this week. And establishing a global corporate minimum tax will help level the playing field for the United States, ensure fairness for the American middle class and working families everywhere, and focus competition for business where it belongs. Last item for all of you. Today, the Department of Justice announced 2 new steps to stem the epidemic of gun violence in our country, following through on the President and Attorney General's announcement in April of a set of initial actions. First, the DOJ has issued a notice of proposed rulemaking to strengthen regulations on stabilizing braces and that help convert pistols into dangerous short-barreled rifles, which it appears the perpetrator of the Boulder shooting used, now that we know more. The department is also publishing model legislation and guidance that will make it easier for states to implement red flag laws, something that's already law in a number of states across the country, which studies have shown can be effective in reducing gun violence, including by preventing suicides and even potential mass shootings. This is part of the president's longstanding commitment to addressing the scourge of gun violence, which continues to claim far too many lives every single day. Josh, kick us off. I'm very thrown off by where everyone's seated. I'll adjust to it. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. 2 questions. First, Senator Manchin laid out the argument that election reform should be bipartisan because anything partisan would, quote, destroy the already weakening binds of our democracy. Does the president agree with that sentiment, or is that sentiment untenable because of the state level changes being pushed by Republicans?
Well, first let me say that the president knows he was elected to deliver for the American people. And his view is that that includes making voting more accessible for people across the country, making it easier and not harder to vote. And he's made clear that there's a real need for federal legislation to protect the sacred right to vote. And we are not going to wait for Congress either. That's why we've taken some steps through our Department of Justice, and also why he's asked the Vice President to lead this effort, both in working with Congress, but also at the state level. Because as you noted, there are a number of problematic laws that have moved forward in states across the country. I think where we are at this point is clearly Senator Manchin has stated his point of view in his opinion piece over the weekend, which many of you, it sounds like, have read, as did we. But the president's view is that we need to move forward not just with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, but also with legislation like the For the People Act, which enjoys, I should note, broad support from the American people, and because it does a couple of things that he thinks are essential. It provides basic protections for registering to vote and how we cast a ballot. It will prevent politicians from drawing congressional district lines for partisan advantage to ensure that people are choosing their representatives. It will help end the corrupting power of money in politics. Now, in terms of the path forward and what that looks like and the mechanics of how it moves forward in Congress, the president is quite open to and willing to work with anyone to enact common sense reforms that benefit the American people. We will stay lockstep with Democratic leadership on what that looks like from here, but I don't have anything to preview about the next steps.
And then secondly, the Justice Department has had a series of policy changes with regards to its relationship with reporters and pursuing reporters' sources and possible prosecutions. And I was wondering, Under this administration, would the Justice Department still be trying to compel reporters to name sources or anonymous or unnamed in court? Would they continue to do that?
Well, I think that the announcement from this weekend, or the statements from this weekend, which are entirely consistent with the president's comments he made just a few weeks ago, make very clear that going forward, consistent with the president's direction, the Department of Justice, in a change to longstanding practice, as many of you have noted and here before, will not seek compulsory legal process and leak investigations to obtain source information from members of the news media doing their jobs. That is entirely consistent with delivering on the president's comments just a few weeks ago, and entirely consistent with his policies. Now, it doesn't mean it's an independent Justice Department. They will proceed, of course, with a range of investigations, which, as we noted in our statement on Saturday morning, we did not know about the gag order until minutes before the reporting came out on Friday night. So that's appropriate, but at the same time, moving forward, consistent with the president's policies, they will not be proceeding with those actions that have been consistent over the last several years. Go ahead, Steve.
The president was not happy with the Capitol counter offer. What happens now on infrastructure?
A couple things, Steve. One, first, the president, I expect, will speak with Senator Capito before he leaves on his trip today or tomorrow. I know we noted Monday in our readout on Friday, but we're looking to schedule that call, and it will be prior to his departure on Wednesday morning. As we noted also in our statement on Friday, the offer did not meet the president's bar of growing the economy, tackling the climate crisis, and creating new jobs. And I would remind all of you, both in our counteroffer, but then in a lot of your reporting, it's clear the president has come down by about $1 trillion. What we've seen on the other side is they've only come up by a small percentage of that. So look, moving forward, he's looking forward to having a discussion with Senator Capito today or tomorrow, and he certainly is eager to see what that discussion can entail, knowing that in any discussion, any negotiation, both sides come closer together. That's always the objective. He's come down quite a bit. We're looking to see more. Now, at the same time, there are a lot of paths forward here, as many of you know, even though our muscles have atrophied a bit on this front. One is Congressman DeFazio, as we noted in our readout on Friday as well, is leading the markup of the House legislation that has a lot of overlap with the American Jobs Plan this week, and that is a path that has a lot of opportunity to move forward in the House. As we know, sometimes the House and the Senate may move forward on different paths, and we've seen that take place on lots of pieces of legislation. The third pathway I would just note is there are Republicans and Democrats who have been out there talking about their eagerness to be a part of this discussion and a part of an opportunity to move forward on the president's bold ideas and historic investment in infrastructure. So we'll look forward to seeing what they have to offer and what conversation we can have with them. So all of these paths we expect to continue to make progress on this week.
What is the status of the semiconductor review? Should we expect that today, tomorrow, when exactly?
Soon, Steve. I would expect you will have more this week. I know there is a lot of interest and eagerness in hearing what the status of the review is and any policies that will come out of that review.
On infrastructure,
Go ahead.
On infrastructure, back on that, does the president have an agreement with Senator Manchin that if the bipartisan talks fails, then Manchin will support the using reconciliation to pass infrastructure?
I'm certainly not going to speak on behalf of where Senator Manchin is. Obviously, he's spoken to his interest in making historic investments in infrastructure. He's also spoken to his openness to raising the corporate tax rate. Those are all positive signs in our view. We'll let him speak for himself on where he stands on any pieces of legislation. Go ahead.
Given the concessions that you just outlined that the president has made so far, should we expect this to be the final round of negotiations with Senator Capito?
I think we have to see where the conversations go over the next day or so, and we're certainly not going to prejudge them. Again, look, the president has come down by approximately $1 trillion. We'll see where the conversation goes when he has the opportunity to speak with Senator Capito, and there are a number of paths where we can move these ideas forward at the same time.
You mentioned your support for this markup that's happening on Wednesday. Is that a signal? Should we read this as some kind of signal to your Republican counterparts that you are ready to go this alone?
I think it's only just a statement of what's happening as a bill becomes a law, which is that a leader in the House is moving forward with marking up a piece of legislation that has quite a bit of overlap with the American Jobs Plan the president proposed. So the time is not unlimited here, as we've stated from the beginning, nor is the president's willingness to compromise. He has areas where he wants to see greater investment. He made clear that the proposal, the offer put on the table, didn't meet his own bar. But we're very open to where the discussion goes from here, and he's looking forward to the opportunity to talk with Senator Capito, as well as others who may come forward with ideas about how to move this forward.
And just one more on this sort of big picture. Secretary Buttigieg had said that, by today you had hoped to see a clear path on infrastructure. Do you have a sense that there is an emerging clear path?
We have several paths. That's the good sign. Go ahead.
Is there new deadlines that the president has set for progress on infrastructure? I know there was Memorial Day. Now you're outlining a few different paths. Is there a time at which he's going to make a decision about which one he's going to take, given that the deadline keeps moving?
Well, first of all, what we said is by Memorial Day, we would hope to have a sense of where it looked like moving forward, and we do. We have a couple of paths forward. We don't know what the end outcome will look like, as you typically don't, as a bill is moving its way to becoming law. And there are several paths forward, as I've noted. So we're going to continue to work on all of those lines. I would also note that Speaker Pelosi has said she wants to move forward with legislation on infrastructure in the House in June. That's exactly what's happening here. Leader Schumer has said he wants to move forward in July. Again, the House and Senate can be on different timelines and pathways.
And then just a quick follow-up on the voting rights. Did Manchin give the White House a heads up that this op-ed would be coming out? Did you guys have any sense of how firm his position was on this legislation?
I'm just not going to get into any channels of private conversation with Senator Manchin or any other senator.
And then just on the vice president, obviously, last week the president said that she was going to take a leadership role in voting rights. Democrats have warned that if Washington doesn't take action, that the midterms will be quite difficult given the changing voting laws. Is there going to be a more, are we going to see signs of more urgency from the White House about taking action on voting rights? Obviously, the president has had a lot of lawmakers in the Oval Office to talk about infrastructure. Will we see more signs of an increasing focus on trying to make progress on voting rights?
Absolutely. But I would also note that early on in the presidency, the president signed into law an executive order that put in place a number of positive steps forward on voting rights, an action he could take without Congress. We've also empowered the Department of Justice, of course, to take actions to implement some of these policies. So we're not waiting. I would also note that the fact that he asked his vice president, they agreed, I should say, since it was her ask, but that she would lead this effort moving forward, tells you what a significant priority it is for this White House. As you know, she's currently on a trip to the Northern Triangle. She'll be back, and I'm certain you'll hear more from her soon. Go ahead, Phil. I'll go to you next April, I promise. I'm just jumping around so I don't forget. Go ahead, Phil.
A bigger picture one, and then one more drill down on infrastructure. What's the president's message? What's your message to Democrats, particularly progressives, who've started to get a little bit antsy? The window's closing. We went through this back in 2009. It's time for us to move. It's not just infrastructure. If you don't move infrastructure, the rest of the $4 trillion agenda doesn't move either. How does the president kind of calm that down?
I think his message is he remains absolutely committed to moving forward with a historic investment in infrastructure, and also to pushing forward the American Families Plan that will help level the playing field, lift up the next generation of workers, ensure there's universal pre-K and access to free community college. These are all initiatives that he has a commitment to moving forward on. And part of the discussion, which we talked about a little bit last week, is also about tax reform and ensuring there's a way to pay for a range of these ideas. It's not that one is assigned by a blood oath to one piece of, one piece of the agenda is assigned to one piece of a pay for. There's opportunity to move forward with several components of the president's agenda. We do have time. We're not using the timeline of the Affordable Care Act as a model here, Phil, but as you know, and anyone here knows, it takes time to move these things forward, to get Democrats on board, to get Republicans on board. Ultimately, we're looking to have enough of a coalition to move forward on these bold, historic ideas. And we obviously don't have that at this moment, but we're working toward that.
And then just to drill down a little bit on the 2.9 markup, this is surface transportation package. It doesn't have, most Republicans are cool to it right now. Can you elaborate how that is a pathway, a viable pathway forward? given you're looking for a bipartisan path there right now? Or kind of what the thinking is behind that markup and that piece of legislation?
Well, I think it's important to note primarily because it has a great deal of overlap with the American Jobs Plan. And certainly it provides an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to vote to support a historic investment infrastructure. Obviously, a markup is just the beginning stage of the process. There's some time to go, but it's important to note because it is a piece of legislation that's moving its way forward even as these negotiations are continuing.